If you're contemplating or planning on relocating anytime in the near future, there are 8 things you absolutely have to do to avoid unnecessary stress and make the transition as smooth as possible. If you want to know what those 8 things are, stick around. Howdy, friends. That's Texan for hello. It's Jeff with Jeff West Properties, your host for the Conroe Living Channel, where we identify and celebrate everything that makes Conroe, Texas, one of the fastest growing cities in America. Now, this video isn't just for people moving to Conroe. This is anyone who's contemplating moving across the city or across the nation. There are things you absolutely have to do to be prepared. Not only am I a relocation expert helping people from all over the nation relocate to Conroe to become Conronians, which is my word, I'm trademarking it soon, but I'm also an expert in personal experience. Since leaving college, I've lived in Tennessee, Texas, Arizona, and California, and in total made 18 different moves, so I know a little bit about the subject. My goal in this video is to share my experience and my mistakes so that you can avoid them and have as smooth a transition as possible. The first thing you need to do is research the area. If you're not familiar with an area, the first thing you're going to want to do is get a basic overview of it. There's a website called citydata.com where you can find out information like best school districts, median age, median income, taxes, weather, all of that kind of thing. Now, City Data will give you a basic overview of the city, but if you really want to know the DNA of a place, the vibe of the city, one of the best things you can do is go to social media. Go to groups like Facebook, Nextdoor, YouTube, and look for community groups. Now, when you go to these groups, just a caveat to keep in mind, 75% of what you're going to see is going to be complaints about something. I've never lived in a place where that wasn't the case. But if you can see past all of that, you can glean some really valuable information about what the city is really like. Another great way to learn about the city is to talk to a local real estate expert. Realtors are going to be one of your best bets for really getting to know a city. Now, there's a misconception about working with realtors sometimes in that you can't really trust everything they say because they're salesmen. But that's not really the case. Look, if you reach out to me and say, I'm thinking of moving, well, I already know that you want to buy a place. You came to me, right? My goal is to help you find the best place that's going to work for you and your family and your overall needs. And it doesn't matter which side of town it's on or where it is. I'm a resource to help you find out what's going to work best. Realtors, more than almost any profession out there, live off of their reputation. 70% of a good realtor's business is going to come from referrals, and you don't get referrals if you don't have clients who are happy with your services. The opposite of that is true as well. If a realtor gets a few bad reviews, it can actually sink their business. So we don't want to play around with our reputation by looking like we've steered somebody in a certain direction that they're not going to be happy with. I have a video of how you can interview and choose the best realtor for you that you might want to check out, because not all realtors are created equal, but they are going to be one of your best sources to really get to know a place. Whatever your priorities are, a realtor can help you with that. If you want to be in close proximity to a gym, or if you want to know what the local music scene is like, or you've got dietary restrictions and you need an Asian grocery store, Indian grocery store, or maybe you're vegan and you need something like a Whole Foods or Sprouts or something like that. Pro tip, if you are moving to the Texas area, as far as groceries go, H-E-B. That's all you need to know. And you're welcome. Texans are proud of a lot of things, but there are 3 things we absolutely would die for. Our H-E-B, our Whataburger, and our Buc-ee's. They're magical. The next thing you need to do is actually go visit. I can't stress how important this is, and this may seem like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised at how many people move to an area sight unseen. A place can look amazing in pictures and on the internet, but in order to really know what a place is like, you've got to have boots on the ground there. The last thing you want to do is buy a house in an area only to find out later that there's something you hate about where the house is located or the neighborhood or something else, and then you're locked into it. Sometimes when people reach out to me saying they're moving to the area and they don't have a chance to come visit it first, my suggestion to them is just to rent. Rent for short term, 6 months, a year. Get to know the area before you finally lock into a place. Now, there's another option that not many people are familiar with, and that's the lease purchase option, where there's a company who you pick out a house, they buy it on your behalf, and they rent it to you. And anytime within that term, you have the option of purchasing that house. But if you don't like it, you just leave when your lease is up. Now, it's a little bit more expensive of an option, but there are certain situations where it could make sense. If you have a job transfer and you don't have a chance to check out the city ahead of time, it gives you the opportunity to move your family into a house that you may want to live in as opposed to an apartment or a house in a rental neighborhood. And then you can decide whether you want to stay there. Now, if you'd like to learn more about that, just reach out to me, send me a text, an email, and I'd be happy to give you more information. Now, here's something important. When I say visit an area, I mean visit an area after you've considered this place as a place for you to live. There's a big difference between visiting a city, maybe on vacation or something like that, and actually going with the intent on living there. You've got to be able to see it through the eyes of a future resident. Another pro tip. If you found a place that you like, if you visited the area, make sure to go to that house several times at different times of the day. Everything from neighborhood activity to street noise could change depending on what time of day it is. The last thing you want to do is buy a place and then find out later that you can't get out of your own neighborhood during rush hour. Now, those are things that you need to do to decide what place is going to be right for you. But once you've made a decision, once you've decided this is a place we're going to move, these next steps are going to be crucial. Number 3, make sure you set up your utilities as soon as possible. This is something you definitely don't want to learn the hard way. Different utility companies work different ways. So sometimes you can do everything online, but other times you may have to go to the utility company, or you may have to send a check or money order ahead before they will set up your service. Or you could have something like a backlog of service times, so the technicians can't get out to set up your stuff as soon as you would like them to. So you want to find out what those rules are and leave yourself plenty of time to get those things done. I definitely learned this the hard way. One of my moves, I was working with my landlord to get somebody else in before I moved out because I had to relocate, and he was letting me out of my lease. So once he found a place, that person wanted to move in right away. So I had a week to find my own place and get moved. First thing I did was call the utility companies, but I did them in the wrong order. So I scheduled my movers first, then I called the electric company thinking, well, they only need a couple of days to get it set up, and I was wrong. They were backlogged, and it took them a week to actually get the electricity turned on. So I was in my house for 2 days with no electricity, and that sucks. You definitely don't want that to happen to you. So make sure you leave plenty of time to learn what the utility companies need and get those things set up so you don't get stuck. Number 4, if you're using a moving company, do your research. This is incredibly important. Some of the biggest nightmare scenarios that I've heard of during a move have involved the moving company, so it's something you definitely want to research these. This is true whether it is a company where you're renting the equipment to move yourself or if it's a full-service moving company. If you're renting the equipment to do it yourself, make sure that you research not just the company, but the location that you're picking up. These are all franchises, and some are not run the same way that others are. I learned this one the hard way when I was moving myself across country. About a month in advance, I booked a moving van and a car trailer. And a month later, I went to pick it up, and they had the van, but they didn't have the car trailer. Now, I consider myself a pretty good driver, but I don't think I could drive both at the same time. I asked the owner if there was anything they could do to resolve this because this was my scheduled moving day. And he said, I don't work with any of the other franchises. I just do it all on my own. We don't have it. You're out of luck. You could take it or leave it.
You're a very bad person.
It is equally important to research your full service mover if you're going that route. Now, when you're getting quotes from different moving companies, you may be tempted to choose the cheapest option. Of course, we all want to save money, but that could really, really backfire on you. I learned this the hard way as well. I went with the cheapest option. And when the movers came, they quoted me a great price. They took about 3 hours to load all my stuff up. And after it was all loaded, they told me about all these other charges they were going to charge me. It was all in the very, very fine print that I didn't see. I thought it was all going to be covered. And when I said it was too expensive, they said, well, you could pay it, or we could just unload all of your stuff in the driveway here. It's your choice.
You people are monsters.
So I had to eat the cost and go ahead and continue to use them. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, when I finally got all my stuff and started unpacking, I realized that there was a box that they had misplaced. In a previous life, I was a musician, a singer-songwriter, so I had a music studio. And The box that was misplaced had about $10,000 of music equipment, different microphones and things like that for my music studio. When I talked to them about it, they said, well, it wasn't them that took it. And when I talked to them about their insurance, they said it wouldn't qualify. So I lost another 10 grand by using this company.
We are bad, selfish people.
After that, I started looking at the reviews they had online, and they were all absolutely horrible. And there were tons of situations just like mine that this happened. That's why it is incredibly important that you research these companies before they use them. It may not have to be the most expensive option, but just make sure other people are satisfied. Pro tip: do not trust the reviews that are on the moving company's site. They can easily manipulate those. They can erase ones that they don't like. It is really important that if you're going to review, you go to places like the Better Business Bureau or Yelp, something online that has unbiased reviews to really find out what these companies are like. Number 5, set a moving expense budget. Now, sometimes when people move, they hold a little bit of money back thinking this will cover everything, but they don't really look at all of the expenses that are involved in moving. Some people don't think about it at all. I had a client who needed every dollar they had to get to the closing table, so they gave everything they had and then realized they didn't have enough money to pay the movers. So they ended up having to borrow money from their parents just to get moved into the new place. There's so many little expenses that we may not think of, like security deposits for utilities or installation charges. I know that I have never moved where I didn't take at least 2 trips to Walmart or Target because there are things that I needed to replace or didn't think about. Sometimes people think, well, I live in this house, I've got everything I need. But then if they upgrade, move into a new place, they may find that they don't have things to cover extra bathrooms or extra rooms. So they need to go buy furniture and art stuff for the walls. And if you don't plan for those things and think of them ahead of time, you end up having to put it on credit cards and financing stuff that you didn't plan for. And you don't want to do that. There are some instances where in order for you to move, like say a job transfer, you need to get out of a lease that you currently have. So make sure you hold money back also for lease break fees. Another pro tip: if you're renting a place and you have to get out of a lease, don't assume that you're going to have to pay the lease break fee. There are certain instances where if you are in a job transfer, something beyond your control, that a landlord may work with you to get somebody else into the place and let you out early. That's not going to be in every case, and it's going to depend on landlord to landlord, but it doesn't hurt to at least ask. Number 6, this is a quick one. Have a yard sale and have it before you move, not after. Inevitably, unless you buy a house that is the exact layout of the house you're living in now, there's going to be some things that don't quite fit, or some things that you've been holding on to too long that you know you need to get rid of. It's much better to do that ahead of time than actually have to pay the expense to move that stuff only to have to turn around and sell it later.
That doesn't make sense.
Number 7, budget your time. What I would do is I would actually write out a timeline of everything that happens, because there are so many little steps that need to happen, and they need to happen in the right order to make a seamless move. Now, when you're putting this timeline together, give yourself some breathing room between steps to account for any emergencies that may happen. A pretty common thing when people are moving is someone may have to sell their existing home before they can move into their new home. And a lot of times people want to get that done as soon as possible, so they will schedule the closing of their current home on one day and closing on the next home either the next day or sometimes even the day of. But what happens if your current home closing gets delayed? It happens all the time. It's just part of the real estate business. Underwriters may need more things, or title company may still be needing to get something rectified, and you have to push back your closing. If you've already got plane tickets booked that night, if you've got your movers already scheduled to pick everything up, if you've got appointments planned for your utilities, you could be in a real bind, and you'll have to spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of headache to actually reorganize all of those things. When you're putting your moving expense budget together, it may be a good idea to plan on paying for a few nights in a hotel, or maybe staying with friends or family just in case something comes up. Also, once you have moved into the place, it's a good idea to give yourself a little bit of buffer room before you start your new jobs, because you want to get your house in order. Pro tip: go to the DMV and get your license and registration done before you start your new job. Every DMV I've ever heard about is notorious for not being very accommodating to your schedule. So you're better off just ripping that Band-Aid off, getting it out of the way before you settle into your new routine. Number 8, keep a utility box. You should keep a box that's going to be the last one that goes on the moving truck and the first one to come off so that it'll be easily accessible as soon as possible. In this box, you're going to want to keep all the pieces that come with disassembled furniture. If you've got a moving company that disassembles your furniture for you, what they inevitably do is they get a little baggie and they put all the nuts and bolts and the wrench, Allen wrench, whatever you need to put it together, and they tape it to one of the pieces. And that stuff gets lost all the time. It's better off for you to keep all that in one place that's easily accessible. Other reason you may want to do that is because if it's at the bottom of a box somewhere, you may have to unpack everything before you're actually able to put things together like your bed, which may be one of the first things that you want to do. So keep that in the box. Also in that box, keep toilet paper. When you move into your new place, it is entirely possible that you're not going to have a chance to go to the store or unpack everything before nature calls. So you're better off safe than sorry. Last thing you want to put in that box is paper plates, plastic cups, plastic utensils. Unpacking everything takes a long time. Before you can actually use your kitchen, you're probably going to have at least 1 or 2 pizza or takeout Chinese nights. Pro tip: if you have valuables that you're moving that you have to box up and take with you, make sure to label it something that only you would know what it is. Again, this is something I learned the hard way. When I had all that music equipment stolen, it was in a box labeled music equipment, so I'm sure that was enticing to whoever the movers were that took it. So label a box something that doesn't imply there's anything valuable in it, but you know that it is. So now, when I move, I have a box that I have labeled human head. Because nobody's going to try to open that box and risk becoming an accessory. Plus, I just think it's funny to imagine the look on a mover's face when they pick that box up. Look, when you move as many times as I do, you've got to find your fun somewhere. Now, I'm going to throw in a 9th bonus thing that's not as much something you do as just something you need to be aware of. Number 9, set your expectations. Inevitably, no matter how much you plan, moving is stressful. So make sure to extend a little bit of grace to all of your family members on that long road trip. Also, when somebody moves, they're going to be leaving behind friends, possibly family. And it's important to know that it's going to be a bittersweet thing. As exciting as it is to move, leaving the people you love behind, it can be tough. So just make sure you remember that going in so when you get to your new place, it doesn't sour you on the experience. Also, and I cannot stress this enough, unless you're moving across the street, wherever you're moving from and wherever you're moving to are going to have different cultures. Embrace it. It's human nature to want to be around things you are familiar with, things that you know. And if you're not careful, because it's going to be a different place, you may end up resenting the things that are different about it. Here in Texas, it's very different from other places. We have our own culture. Heck, we have our own culture in the different cities in Texas and even the different sides of town in those cities. In Texas, we have a slogan, "It's a whole other country." And that's because we are very, very different, and also because we used to be a country back in the 1800s, but that's a different story. It's been said that Texans are a proud people, and it's true, but the proudest Texans I've ever met in my life are former Californians. Now, I've lived in both places. I've lived in Los Angeles, I've lived in Houston, and the culture is very, very different. But my Californian friends and neighbors, I have found, just jump headfirst into the culture and adopt it, and they end up becoming as proud to be a Texan as anyone I've ever met before. So embrace those changes, and you may find that the things that are different are the things you end up falling in love with the most in your new home. If you found this video helpful, would you do me a favor and give me a like? Every time someone likes one of my videos, I get a little bit of an endorphin release, and you can know that you did that. Also, if you're interested in learning more about one of the fastest growing cities in America, Conroe, Texas, make sure to subscribe to the Conroe Living Channel. In this channel, you're going to find the best restaurants, the best communities to live in, the local festivals, and anything else you'd want to know about what makes up the DNA of Conroe, Texas. Another way you could do that is checking out this video.